love to be with you all to celebrate the extraordinary life of Al Jansen. Though I'm on the other side of the world, my heart is there in Huntington Beach. I loved Reverend Al from the time I first met him as a 13-year-old. He had come to our church as a guest speaker and stayed that weekend with my family. I remember him encouraging me as I practiced the piano song for that Sunday service. Afterwards, he said, "I knew you could do it." That was only the beginning of a mutually adoring relationship with the man who would one day become my father-in-law. During the 10 years as my pastor, he taught me more than I probably realized about living with faith in Jesus. His gentle manner and his very apparent love for the Lord has taught me just as much as his careful teaching on Sunday mornings. He gave me my first impression of who the Holy Spirit is and told me that he could see evidence of him in my life. I will never forget that conversation. When Perry and I started dating, it was clear that I had Al and Jackie's approval. That's very true. I remember one time we were holding hands and my mom was pulling out of the driveway. While on vacation with her family one time, Al asked me to drop the Reverend title. That was hard for me at first because it was more than just a habit. I sincerely respected who he was. Now, 34 years later, I reflect on all that my sweet father-in-law has meant to me. There's no way to adequately express in a brief write-up like this just how much I loved him. Second to his investment in my own personal faith in Christ, I appreciate that Al modeled for his sons how to be a wonderful husband and father. As a wife to one of those sons, my gratitude runs deep for the effect that he's had on our marriage and children. Now, with my son being a brand new husband, I can see that the legacy is carrying on to the next generation. Of course, I want to honor my own parents at this point, as their investment has left a lasting impact as well. I believe in my heart that Al's biggest hope for his memorial service wasn't that he would be glorified, but that those who haven't yet put their trust in Jesus would be moved to do just that. I might ask now, what are you waiting for? Life can be briefer than we expect. Life with Jesus is forever, and it can begin today. It's from my wife. So, anyone else? You don't have to have it written out or any eloquent thing. Just come on up and share who you are and the little word. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm being really pushy here. I wanted to say something when I was up there, Luke, and I went, you can come up, it's not going to take long at all. Where's my mom? Jackie? Mom? Okay, pay attention here. Because this lady right here, with these Stearns Hardy stock that she has, this lady's going to live to be about 98. So a lot of us are going to be dead by the time she passes away. So I just sense, she's not going to have all these, people here talking about what great things she did, because this ministry was Al and Jackie. And I just want her, I wanted to say this in the service when people are talking about him and how he touched their lives. She was right there by his side, and she was really a part of this ministry. So a lot of this testimonial, Mom, is for you too. So it's kind of cool. You think, what are you going to say at my memorial? She knows.
My name is Tony Guy, and my wife and I were members of the United Methodist Church in Santa Maria. And we started going when we were in our early 20s. We had just been married, and about 5 years into our marriage, we were having all kinds of marriage difficulties. So my wife and I came to see Al and Jackie because they are a couple. And I remember Al spoke lovingly but very firmly to me. So I know I've heard a lot of people say how generous he is and how loving he is, and he was, absolutely. But he also knew how to speak to our hearts, and that was the main thing. So Al and Jackie both helped my wife and I through our marriage issues. And after we'd been married for 10 years, Al remarried us. That was 14 years ago. And Jackie was there the whole time. She orchestrated our marriage vows, and she played her violin for about a half an hour at our house. It was absolutely amazing. So Al and Jackie, they're absolutely amazing. Al was like a father. He was a father to me. He just opened his arms and welcomed me in. And Jackie did the same with my wife, Natalie. And so that was 14 years ago. I said at Al's 70th birthday, same thing I'll say today. Al's influence on my life and how the Lord used him in my life caused me to go back back to school, and today I'm an ordained pastor because of the influence that Pastor Al had in my life. So I just say thank you, and just as Gail said, Jackie, you guys are a team. You always were a team, and there's absolutely no way to separate the two of you. We love you, Jackie.
But Mike means just come on up.
My family came to America in 1980, and because of the Brummets, June and Ray Brummett, who lived in a mobile home park, we ended up, they were my first wife's aunt and uncle, and fortunately we ended up coming to this church. It was a difficult transition, particularly for my kids who were 15, 13, and 10 at the time. But the influence of Fum Chum and Reverend Al and Jackie and their children in the youth program was such a great help in getting my kids assimilated into American culture. They spoke with a pronounced accent, not quite like mine, more South African, but we will never be able to be grateful enough to the Jansen family for everything that they did for us when we first came.
My name is Bob Murphy, and I thought Al was my best friend. I guess we're all competing. We probably all felt that way. I met Al in 1980. We moved here from Illinois, and I still remember, he still remembers the day he wandered down our street in Huntington Beach, and he saw me working on a sailboat. He said, "You really didn't seem very glad to see me." He'd gotten referred from the Methodist pastor we had back in Illinois, and at that point I was kind of spiritually in the dumps. And Al and I became very close to that period. We used to have breakfast every week down on PCH, and really shared some deep things. And I guess he was kind of a mentor toward me. Actually, Al was quite an entrepreneur, and he did a lot of things that I did. He was working on an old car. I don't know if you ever remember the old Mercedes that used to be out in the driveway. Anybody remember his old Mercedes? It was a money pit. And for a while he was, I think he was selling skateboards. And he also, for a while, he left the United Methodist Church and became a Free Methodist Church. But a few years after Al left, I actually became a pastor here in the church, went back to seminary, and kind of followed his footsteps. And after about 10 years in the United Methodist Church, I became a Free Methodist pastor too. So he really did have an influence on my life. He just is a neat guy. A year or two ago, he got to spend the night in our house, and we were so privileged that they actually wanted to come and stay with us. He was just a good friend. We get together and just kind of pursue old memories, and I just want to say, I think everybody that knew Al really would say he was their best friend.
Bob and Al became Free Methodists. I became a very expensive Methodist. I knew Al through all my ministry, starting off as a young pastor, and we began to connect at conference and then through ashrams. We got to do ashrams, and somebody should say, "Jesus is Lord." Jesus is Lord. That's what we remember about Al and his little puppet. What was it? Freddie. And when my little boy was about the size of the puppet, Al got him on this knee. Teddy and Freddie, they talked together. That was kind of cool. But the most influential time was when the Fallbrook housing situation changed. Al came down to be my associate pastor working here, and I mentored him in everything he knows. Had nothing to do with me. We had a great time together here, working for that short time, Jackie and Al, and they took care of our kids. We went to a 2-week healing seminar. But we were planning to work together for a long time, and then the triplets were born, and off to Arizona he went, and since then we've just supported each other, and he supported me tremendously. So I praise God. I'm John McFarland, and I'm so blessed to have known Al and Jackie and worked with them for that season of life.
I'm Tom Lazier, and we knew Al. We're here for the whole 10-year time. As a matter of fact, my wife Sandy and I, and Bill and Benita Unick, who I'm sure many of you remember, were kind of on a committee to look for a pastor to replace, I believe it was Reverend Ernie that was leaving. And so we went out to Borrego Springs and camped out and went to a service that was led by Al. And it was instant love. We just knew that he was the right. I don't want to imply that we had anything to do with it, because I think that's an overestimation of what our influence was. But at least we went out there and confirmed that he was surely the one to be here. And I was with Pastor Reverend Al toward the end of his time here, and one meeting we were going over it, and he said, anybody can tell me what Acts 1:8 is? And you'll remember that it's, it's not for us to know the time and the place, but we'll receive the Spirit, and we'll be his witnesses in Judea, Samaria, and to the end of the earth, even including the beach. And he said, Al said, that's good, and he said, if I had anything to do with it, I would spend even more time on Acts 1:8, reaching out to the people of Huntington. So it stuck with me, and it's interesting to me that we all have that time to be that witness. And I know that's exactly what Al would need us to do. So praise God for Al and his time here.
Bear with me, I'm going to read a poem. I am Sally Valentine, my better half Bob. This represents both of us and our relationship with Al and Jackie. In 1981, 1982, we came to Funchal for a visit or two. A couple with 3 small children, we were brand new. Pastor Al and Jackie were ministering at the time. They became role models for us with their family sublime. Throughout their years of ministry with us and other churches too, our blessed friendship was strengthened as our Christian bond grew. Our lives have interwoven like a lovely cherished quilt, and we are grateful for the relationship God has built. There are so many ways to describe Al with Jackie at his side. Through happy and tested times, they allowed God to be their guide. Al was a man with many gifts and a minister extraordinaire. He was wise, witty, fun, and compassionate beyond compare. He can be described as a willing servant, shepherd, and teacher, and an effective counselor, evangelist, and encourager. Many people were drawn to his steadfast and loving personality. Choosing to be a pastor seemed to fit Al perfectly. Al, we are proud of how you handled your years of cancer. Being positive, courageous, and proactive was your answer. While we will miss you, you have left a legacy for us as a gift, and knowing that you are with Jesus in heaven gives our spirits a lift. We love you, Al and Jackie.
Hi, my name is Jansen, Al's grandson. Growing up overseas, my time with my grandpa was fairly limited to when we were visiting back when he came to us. And the beautiful thing in that was that Grandpa Al I really felt he treasured those times as really precious. He was very deliberate about fitting all of his godly grandfatherliness into the limited time that we had together. I really admired him for treating me like a spiritually mature man from a young age. He really treated me like I was worth talking to about Christ really openly in a mature way, and that was really good for me because I got to step up to that, and he really guided me in that. And one thing that I will always remember about my grandpa Al is that he was very comfortable about bringing up talking about his Lord Jesus Christ very frequently, and not in a heavy-handed way, but in a very casual way that just told you that God was on his mind a lot. And God was just so integrated into his life that natural conversation about our Lord Jesus Christ was just very present there. And then I will always hold on to that as my major memory of my grandpa Al.
Hi, my name is Vicky Takundas. My family came to Famcha in 1984. I was encouraged to come here by some of my school friends, and I am greatly appreciative of all of them for doing that for me. My last interaction with Ella was a year and a half or 2 years ago, and all I can say is that he was always very encouraging and loving, and he greatly encouraged me to continue to walk the walk that needs to be walked. And he was just a really loving and gracious man.
Hi, I'm Nancy Long Neumeister. Neumeister is my maiden name. My mom and dad, Joyce and Larry, on a cruise, but grew up with Pastor Al, as I did. Pastor Al started when I was about 5 years old. I wouldn't have remembered if I was here throughout his tenure. Being 5 years old, you don't remember that kind of stuff. But I do remember being in the classrooms on the other side of that building, and Reverend Al would visit us all the time. That's how I knew him. He would come over all the time. And growing up in this church, he definitely was a part of the youth group. And when I was at school, I didn't have a happy time. I was picked on, I was beat up a lot, everything like that. And I enjoyed coming to Sunday because of Reverend Al, because he made me feel wanted. He made me feel that I belonged here and that I was worth something. And with Jackie, I have to say, since I want to make sure we say something about her, in grade school, 5th grade, when they offered music, I believe I picked up violin because of you, because you played for so long. And I believe we played together many times here at church, and that was a wonderful time for me. So I want to thank you, and now that he's watching over us, that he was very important in my life growing up in that very awkward age of life. I praise you, thank you.
I met Al in 1967. I spent the summer of 1967 in San Francisco becoming a world-famous rock star. And I came back to San Diego to start my next year of college. And while I was gone, I had received a couple of letters from friends telling me that there was a new minister at our church. So the first Sunday that I went to church, there was Al at the back afterward, and we shook hands, and he introduced himself. And the next day, I was at the grocery store, and a voice said, "Can I help you, sir?" And I turned around, and it was Al. And the first thing he said was, "Hi, I'm Al Jansen. I'm the minister at North Claremont." And I think that says an awful lot about his modesty. You know, like I wouldn't remember him, you know. And but it says a lot about his modesty, and we got to be friends very quickly. We started, there was a college age group that met at Al and Jackie's every Sunday night. And I remember one Sunday in particular, the meeting had not gone well. And we left, and you could tell that Al and Jackie were kind of feeling down because it was one of those times when just nothing kind of worked. And so I'm going to throw a bunch of names out to you now. But Tim Stoll, Warren Carrico, Bill McKinney, Robin Moore, Linda McGee, Gary Garland, Warren Carrico, and I decided that when a meeting doesn't go well, the best thing you can do is come back in half an hour and toilet paper a house. And I understood, I found out later you guys watched us do that. That's how experienced we were. But I don't know that there was ever a time when we had such a group of people where the love was so mutual and it was all fostered by Jackie and Al.
Hi, everybody. My name's Mike Jansen. I'm one of the Jansens floating around here. And Uncle Al to me and Aunt Jackie, Neil, Perry, and Gail. I grew up, I got here, Jack is Al's brother. And if you can see the family resemblance right there, that you definitely know he's his brother. So. But anyways, I'm up here. I just wanted to share just something, a memory of Uncle Al and Aunt Jackie growing up. They really, when we were young, my brother Tim and I went and stayed with them in Borrego Springs for a couple of weeks. And Aunt Jackie, you'll remember this. We came to Borrego Springs. We stayed there with you guys, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not sure how long it was. My mom was sick at the time, and they took us in and took care of us. Well, my dad, attended to my mom and my little sister at the time, and it was a good memory for us. They really took us in. We really felt part of the family there, and it was wonderful. And Uncle Al and Aunt Jackie, it was a wonderful time. Thank you very much. And I'd like to share one last thing. My dad and I had a chance to go to Arizona to say goodbye to Uncle Al, and I'm glad we did that. Really feel at rest, and I know he's in a good place. And this is a good memorial for him to be here today. Thank you very much.
My name is Vicki Mundy, and I think I was asked to speak. With everybody else, it is an honor to him that so many people felt that way. I first met him when I came to Borrego Springs, and I was a real troubled girl at that time. And I remember hearing about this new young couple that had come to the church, and I wasn't really interested in the church. I used to go and sing on Sundays, a lot of times with a hangover. And so this was all, wasn't anything that was appealing to me in this. And then when they said this nice young couple, and she plays the violin, I thought, lame. I probably won't like these people. But then I kept hearing about them and hearing that he was going out and visiting people. And he would even go to the bars and talk to people. And my dad, who was pretty much the town drunk and pretty much a reprobate, had no use for anybody. Al could go over and talk with him, and he would sit and talk to him for hours. He spent the time to talk with him, whereas the local Baptist minister, he was kind of nice man, but he was spewing condemnation to the people. And unfortunately, most people at that time felt disqualified from the love of God. And the thing that Al did was he let all of us know in that town that somebody had arrived who was truly a messenger of the Lord, and it came without condemnation. Well, it wasn't long. I remember singing in church for Christmas, and I remember at the end of the service, I went down and after I sang, I went down and sat with Jackie, and I noticed that she had her hands up, and I thought, oh, that's different. I'd never seen anybody. I wasn't a real churchgoer, but she was showing worship to the Lord. And then we started singing Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and then I started to just cry. And I don't know why. I know now why. The Holy Spirit was convicting me and coming on me, but I didn't feel pressure. I felt undone, but I felt love. Well, fast forward about a week later, I got saved at a fire-breathing Dragon Baptist revival, which was God's sense of humor, because I could never deny, because I wouldn't have been caught dead in one. Well, there was a group of us, and we kind of ate through that in a hurry, and then I was hungry for more. And then Al and Jackie just took us under their wing, and it was young kids, and they helped us put together a coffee house. We built our big fish sign. We made T-shirts. We had groups come in from San Diego, and what was wonderful about it is through that opportunity, we were able to put our faith out on the line and cross the line into that new identity that people need to do. When you accept Christ, you need to be willing to let go of the old and put on the new. And He made it easy. It made sense, but yet there was such a strong supernatural element to it as well. And then we continued on and met, we met in small groups, and then came the awful day when we heard that they were going to Huntington Beach. And have you heard, Al and Jack, you're moving to Huntington Beach? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I remember thinking, and this is way beyond my years, we're going to be fine. Because if we're not fine, that's not much of a testimony to what they put in us and what they deposited in us. We are going to be fine. And we were fine. And I'm going to throw this in just because it was kind of funny. The very first time I saw him, I had been in the local parade, and a bunch of us ladies had dressed up like call girls. And so I thought it'd be real funny to go over to the Methodist minister and give him my card. And I did. And I thought, oh, how funny. Well, years later, at my 60th birthday, guess what? He gave me the picture of me in that outfit. And just that big grin on his face. But that's the kind of guy he was. Nothing put him off. He saw what was inside. And one day I remember being in my apartment, and I was crying and I was weeping. I didn't understand, what happened. I was on this high. I got saved. I'm a new person. I'm not that old me anymore. And then I started being irritated with my mom, and all these different things that hadn't been there. Knock, knock, knock on the door. I open the door. He says, "Are you all right?" I said, "No, I am not all right." And the Lord had told him to turn around from town, come back to my place, and minister to me. And probably the most important thing that he ever said to me was, "Vicki, you've been very sick, and Christ is your vehicle to get well." And it let me know it's not overnight. It isn't a dramatic conversion. That was my start. But he let me know that it's a journey. And I'm still on that journey. When I first heard that he had cancer 20 years ago, I couldn't handle it. And I just withdrew right away. I couldn't stand the thought of not seeing him anymore, because he had been like a father to me. And now I know, I'm in a place now that I know that I am so excited to see him again. And in different times when we prayed for Al, prayed for the family, there's just such a deep settled peace in my spirit, knowing that he is up there just delighting. And being delighted here, again, that it's not just all a tribute to him, though I think it's certainly well-deserved, but it's a tribute to Jesus, and Jesus is Lord. And he has affected every one of our lives and continues to do so through his children and hopefully through each one of us. So even though he's gone and he's gone on in this realm, we are his hands and feet just as we are for Jesus.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Prim, and my first connection to the Jansens was when my church in San Diego went to sing at their church in Borrego, and we had an immediate connection. And then after that, I sat under the teachings of Al during the evangelist hour at the
by the time I got up here, everybody said so many lovely things, and they're all so true, but I have a real special place in my heart for both Al and Jackie, and my mom and dad, I'm pretty sure in 1963, met Al at an ashram. And my dad was mentally ill, and he was maybe a born-again Christian, a Jew for Jesus, but one of those people that Mike was talking about, that you would just talk too much and you would run the other direction, and but not Al, never Al. And he spent a lot of time ministering to my dad and talking to my dad. He also married us right here, and he only met us once. We weren't going to a church. My mom introduced us to him and said, "Listen, I know some ministers that'll marry you." And he had one meeting with us, and he said, "Listen, you guys are ready. Let's just do it. You have to have the three things. You have to do this and that." Our kids grew up in the Sierra Ashram. Jackie ministered to our middle daughter many, many times, and to our whole family. And I guess, certainly Al would never want this, but he probably, as I think about it through the years, was the closest to what Jesus incarnate would be like, to walk with him. And I certainly, like you guys have all said, when you talked to him, you felt like he was listening to you. You were his best friend. I think I felt the same way walking up the hill at the ashram. He's listening just to me, and he's not condemning, and he's, yes, Nancy, yes. You feel like, wow, I'm as important as it. He didn't feel like a pastor, per se, that you couldn't just, you could get very close to him. Thank you.
My name is Jimmy Swenson, and I've known Alan Jackie through the ashram for so many years, and it's been, I could just go on and on about things, but Al was very instrumental in me learning about who the Holy Spirit was. I said, I've been in a Methodist church, and I said, I believe in Holy Catholic Church, the Holy Spirit, but that's all I believe. But it was through him that I learned who the Holy Spirit was in my life, at the three parts of the Trinity. Also, I'm still single, but anyway, it was. But there was this. I thought there was this stigma about being single, and you couldn't talk about another man or look at another man and have him look at you because people would think you were chasing around. But Al was so pure that I didn't have that fear of somebody taking that wrong view of whatever it was, because he was there, and I think I drove to Oshawa once with him, and Jackie was home, and I didn't worry about it, and I don't think she worried about it. I was no threat, but he was that pure person. And one time we were going to Oshawa, and there was this big huge fire up there in the Sierras, and half of us had to stay down on the hill, and Al just took over very calmly, we didn't know whether the cat would be burned or whether we were burned or whatever. But he had just taken over and been there. But it was, like Nancy said, one of the most like Christ-like person. And there's a few other Christ-like persons who happen to be from the ashram of Gilbert that I thought were that way. And so Alan reaches that. But because of Al and Jackie and our kids and how much they meant to me and the ashram, and I just want to thank them, and I'm so glad that we got to be here today.
Hi, my name is Mimi Cole, and some of you I'm so happy to see. And I have to say thank you, Jackie and Al, for my 2 lovely years that I can work together with Al here. And those 2 years, I had a lot of fun, and I really saw Al doing a lot of work, and he was a very good administrator. And so he worked very hard, and on evenings, and he would be here. But one of the funny things that Al and I had, and I don't think that anyone else would talk of, is they would say, Slim and the midget. But I really want to thank God for allowing me to serve here for those 2 years that I was here. And it was through this church that is so manifesting the gift of the Spirit that I brought it with me into the rest of my ministry. And I'm still doing it now. So praise God for work that people have put in, and people like Elle who are so faithful and be able to mentor people who can keep on going in the Lord's service. So thank you, Jackie and Elle, for a lovely time when I was here.
My name is Jack Nichols. I'm a preacher's son, and Methodist preacher's son. And all along, I just thought I'd be able to get into heaven on my dad's coattails, no problem. And then, about 1980, my wife's mother came out to visit from Florida. She was hard of hearing, so they went to 2 or 3 different churches. This is one of them that she could hear. So they came back here several more times. And it was in this very room. And Sunday morning they would have chairs all lined up in here. Well, after a few months, my wife probably and she was introducing around. Oh, you're married. You've been coming all by yourself. They didn't know that she had a husband. Anyway, it wasn't long until I know exactly what Jackie was talking about. John Wesley's Aldersgate experience. I was sitting there in the middle, and I have no idea what Al was preaching on, but I felt a strange warming in my heart. So at the end of the service, luckily, Reverend Al